So my name's Ossie Bayram. I'm the UK Vice President at Adlook. We're an advanced AI brand growth platform. And this is Philipp. I'll let you introduce yourself, Philipp.
Yeah, thank you.
Your job title's
I
longer
know.
than my questions.
I know. I need to work. I need to work on that. I need to AI come up with like a letter acronym or something. So yeah, hey guys, I'm Philipp. First of all, thank you, Brand Innovators. A great event, great location, by the way, as well. I love it. I was at a procurement marketing conference yesterday, and I can tell you it was not as not as stylish. Yeah, so my name is Philipp. I work for Bayer Consumer Health. So we are part of Bayer, as you may know. We have three divisions: an agricultural division, a pharmaceutical division. I'm in the OTC space, so we do the brands like Claritin, like Bepanthen, Berocca, to name a few. And yeah, so my journey is that I started in marketing a long time ago. Then I went to agency for a bit. Then I joined marketing procurement, which at the time didn't even know what it was. I think it was in its infancy at the time. It was in 2011, and I basically built the marketing procurement team at Adidas, which was super exciting because we were 4 people, and the marketing spend was about 2 billion at the time. That I did that. Then I came to the UK. My wife is British, so she's like, we got to go home now. I'm like, okay. Got here in 2016, did a marketing procurement role at Bayer. And then about 5 years ago, I got poached by the CMO of the consumer division and to work for her and elevate our, at the time, still fairly tactical agency relationships to strategic partnerships. And I basically look after our agency relationships, the global strategic ones, but also what I call non-agency partners, and that can be anything from federations. Brand Innovators is one of them. I work with them a lot. Can Lions, but then also, for example, startups in the digital health space, because we are now actually also building, let's say, solutions beyond the pill, as we call that, right? So we have creams and ointments and pills, and then obviously today you need to provide some digital infrastructure around that. So yeah, that's almost as long as my title. So yeah, I hope it provides a bit of context.
Yeah, no, thank you. We're obviously here to talk about purposeful partnerships, but I wanted to open with a question around, we're in not just an industry, but a world that's seems like constant change and constant added layers of complexity. So I guess it's 2 questions in one. So how has that changed the roles and internal makeup of a marketing team? And how do you ensure that team is at the forefront of that change, and ensuring that you're kind of staying ahead of the curve with any development in market?
Yeah, it's a $1 million question, I guess. I can, of course, only speak to us and what we are doing, and maybe what I see also, in the industry. And especially, when we talk about complex organizations, I can tell you something about that because, we are 160 years old. We have, grown up in an era which I think didn't even have cars. So, let alone the internet or anything else like that. So, we are very hierarchical, and we are quite large, quite traditional. We're in an industry with a lot of regulation. So it's not an easy one for us to be agile. But what has happened over the last few years, we had a new CEO come in at a corporate level, so not only at the consumer level, but at a corporate level, American gentleman called Bill Anderson, and he actually brought in a new operating model called dynamic shared ownership. And that's an interesting one because it basically, the ambition is to take hierarchy completely out, and to create an environment where basically, everything happens in a team, right? So you create so-called work teams around specific challenges or, especially the consumer or the customer. And that team is then empowered to work on it and, also own the decision. And of course, that is mind-blowing for a lot of people, especially in our environment. But it's something what we implement right now. And also, for example, in our marketing team, we don't have hierarchies and lines. We have circles. It's all circles. So I think that's an interesting new approach. And again, I think it's a big experiment for someone like us. We are now in it for the last couple of years, and I think it's what I've learned also. It's maybe more something which happens in the startup world. So it really is a bit like this, brings in the thinking and the mindset of startups, short agile cycles. We now work in 90-day cycles, and after 90 days we have retros and all of that stuff, which again, I think for me personally, it's not something that that alien, because I've worked like this as well, also within other places. But for, I think, conventional or traditional companies, it is quite different. And also for marketing teams, coming to your question, how do marketing teams have to set themselves up? I mean, it does change how marketing teams work, right? So, for example, we have 7 mega brands, and we have now built work teams around those brands, right? And we have teams, interdisciplinary teams from, obviously brand marketers are in it, but we also have finance in it, we have legal in it, we have R&D in it, and they then really own the development of the brand. And it's early days still, but we are seeing positive signs. But it all comes down to the mindset, right? And then it almost becomes, there's almost a natural, I would say, selection process. People who can really thrive in this environment and like how to work like that, they'll stay, they enjoy it. Others who are really more, let's say, maybe a bit more traditional in their thinking, in their ways of working, they'll struggle and they leave maybe at some point, right? So, but I think for companies like ours, it's important to do that transformation and try out these different ways of working, and especially now when it comes to our agencies, right? And that's of course where I sit, between our agencies and our teams. That's where the magic happens. And I think for agencies, it's exciting to work with us in this new setup. And that will hopefully then also mean that we get better work out.
Well, you mentioned it's easier for a startup. So I work for a startup essentially of 170 people, which is like a pinprick compared to you guys, and it still gets very hierarchical all the time, right? Everyone wants to take ownership. Everyone wants to be involved in every decision.
Yeah, so it's funny because I spoke to a guy recently from Meta, and he said, we actually do this now again. So they basically, because they were obviously a startup 20 years ago, as we famously know, but they have become so hierarchical now and so big, and so maybe also traditional and political, that they have to basically go back to the beginnings again, right? So I think it's quite interesting that if you think about it, of Meta and Facebook, you think it's the most, the biggest startup of the startups, but it's maybe not anymore.
Yeah, so maybe we should take tips from you guys of how to be more agile, which is quite ironic. So partnerships, internal partnerships are really interesting, right? So you're talking about working more collaboratively internally, because when we think of partnerships, we always think external partners, like who can we partner with to grow business? Internal is equally as important. But thinking about external partners now, you're much more hands-on with your partners and not just leaning on the agency, more direct relationships. So how do you go about, and there's plenty of partners you can work with. There's a plethora of them.
Yeah.
It's constantly growing. What does that selection process look like? And what is like critical criteria for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because obviously a company of our size, we have to be selective. We cannot work with everyone and anyone because it's just not manageable. I mean, when I started in procurement, we had like 5,000 agencies, right? So it was all about, okay, we have to just reduce. And that's maybe, for companies like mine, it's because we are also very decentralized and you have relationships at the local level. We have, in 200 countries or something. So it's something you just have to manage. And especially in today's world where, like we have a lot of providers, and everybody does, kind of the same, but then different. And it's really important to be smart and integrate that. So I think for us now, the big word is integration, obviously. That means that we work with, fewer, bigger partners, but we then also obviously leave space to get, fresh and new talent in, new partners, maybe like yourselves, who can provide an edge and can, I call it like this, the core and the fringe. So, we have, a core team, a core partner, strategic partners, and then we build, on that fringe around, we have a bit more flexibility, right? And we can get, people in and people out in 90-day cycles maybe, right? For a project, you bring someone in, you work together, you check, is it done? Great, then maybe you off board again, or you keep going. And then maybe also something I wanted to share is the way how we pitch. I think that's something which is interesting, because even speaking to pitch consultants, not many clients do that, and that's called a pitch in a day. It's a workshop style pitch. And I mean, it's more for creative, but we are looking into trying this also for more integrated pitches. That we, instead of just doing the old school way, which to me is madness, like we cannot do pitches like 30 years ago. Like it's just bonkers to me. But a lot of clients still do it. We basically do what it says. We do a pitch in a day. So we pitch the agency, or we brief the agency in the morning. We give a bit of context on the brand and what it's all about up front, to be honest. So it's not just a pitch, but not a day, but it's not much more. So we brief the agency in the morning, and we basically workshop, 1 or 2 tasks throughout the day. And the agency comes back and presents in the evening, and, and put it even into testing, and off we go. And I think this is kind of like just a different way of looking, at, getting in touch with partners and identifying your partner, because it's, like in this case with a pitch, it's a fake process, right? I mean, it's also important, it's a decision-making process. A lot of clients, I think, abuse the pitch for creating free work, right? So we really want to use that as a decision-making process. And if great works comes out of it, great. But if it's not the main purpose. Yes, I think this, if you do something like that, you take the fakeness out as much as you can. You really get to know, the other side, and see how you can work together. But it is also more than just chemistry, right? It's more than just, okay, like, do we like each other? It's how can you work together? And I think especially now these days, there is so much more you can do with technology, than in the past. I mean, we did the last big pitch in a day in 2019, so way before, ChatGPT and all of that stuff. And we were stunned what, the agencies produced in a day. I mean, like, it was incredible. So thinking, what is possible now is, unheard of. So things like this I use this as an example. Like, this is, I think, how, partner selection should look like, and I think it's much more 2025, and if it's about co-creation, it's about identifying how you can work together, and yeah, I think this is something which we should do more and more as an industry.
Definitely, and I think it will really show true creativity as opposed to those much longer pitch cycles. You've spoken about integrated partnerships, which are generally viewed as like a long-term strategic play. And when people mention procurement, I know you was in procurement, but they normally go, oh my God, no, that's going to take forever, right? So how do you balance that longer-term strategic vision with the short-term pressures on the actual business to sell product, or whatever the KPIs or short-term objectives are?
First of all, I want to apologize if you had some bad experiences with procurement, because honestly, I mean, and the truth is, there's a lot of bad procurement out there. And it's not maybe their fault, right? It's just because they don't have the background or the experience or even the interest, right? In some companies, it's literally like a numbers game, and it's all about like, okay, let's renegotiate or whatever, and that's just very old school. So, but there's also good procurement out there, and if you have good, that's what I also recommend always to agencies and others. If you realize there is bad procurement, just try to stay away from them as much as possible. If there is good procurement, they can be really an ally, right? Because good procurement people, they want to scale good partnerships, and they can be they can be an advocate for you in a client organization. So don't dismiss procurement as from the beginning, because if they are good and if you can work with them well, they can really be an ally and get you more business with the client. So just free tip. What was your question?
The question was, how do you balance the short term?
Yeah, of course. I think with first of all, when you have good strategic partners and and build these long-term relationships, and we have done that over the last few years. And actually, one of the agencies one of the case studies was Knorr earlier, just before lunch. So they work with Mullen Lowe, for example. We work with Mullen Lowe. They are a fantastic partner for us, right? We have worked with them now. Actually, they won the pitch in the day, by the way. So they have really done a good job then, and we have built with them a really good strategic partnership over the last 5-6 years. And with someone like a partner like that, where we have this trusted relationship, this trusted partnership, we know each other quite well. We know what we can do. We know what we maybe lack a little bit. You can make sure that what you said is the requirement, that you have a long-term vision, but you also can address short-term needs you have as an agent. You can cover all of that, right? I think it's important that if you build long-term relationships, that they can also help you in the short term, or if they are not the right piece to that puzzle, you get someone else in through the agency or directly to help you in that on these kind of questions. So I think it's something you kind of have to balance, but it all comes down how solid you have built the partnerships, and also how open they are. I think one of the challenges, of course, is and that's something I've been working on the last few years, and I haven't 100% cracked it yet, but like how agencies or partners work together, right? Like for the better good of the brand or as us as a client, because obviously there's always competition, especially in times like right now where everybody is short of cash and everything. There is agencies want to make sure that they get their fair share of the cake. So you have to find ways to, and also maybe incentivize good collaboration, and that's something we are working on, because I think that's the next really. That's key if you want to take it from good to great.
Yeah, and you mentioned there's a shortage of cash out there in the market. Everyone's trying to drive efficiencies within their businesses, or trying to deliver more for the same or for less, and deliver better outcomes. And something like AI will be something that drives that. But at the forefront of that is generally the people, right? So how important does talent become when you've got maybe less headcount to deliver better outcomes?
Yeah, I think this is maybe the biggest thing for me right now, and I mentioned it I think yesterday at my keynote, but also this morning when I had a question for the gentleman from PepsiCo. I think with technology coming in and with AI coming in with the last couple of years and taking our industry by storm, right? Which it has. I mean, it's literally like on every panel. And try to avoid as much as possible, but we have to talk about it. I think we all over-indexed a bit on the tech over the last couple of years because it was it is such an exciting new technology, or maybe not so new, but at least I think most of us, we haven't maybe been that closely worked with tools which are available now. So I think we have over-indexed on the tech. Also agencies, I can tell you, in the big holding companies especially, they are selling the tech like crazy, but they're not necessarily following up with the right human resource to facilitate the tech, right? And even the tech is maybe not as mature as they make us want to believe. So it's very important that we balance, the tech with human resource, and that we kind of like integrate technology and people, and making sure that this works well together. Because also otherwise, I really do fear that things will just become very, very similar, sea of sameness, very boring, and the magic, what surely PepsiCo has explained today, and maybe also the Knorr example. is, I think, under threat otherwise, right? Because it just becomes, algorithms, spitting out stuff which is kind of like just a bit bland. So I think, yeah, but that's important, right? I think going forward, we need to make sure that human resource or human magic and technology works well together, and I think then it really is exciting.
So then we talk about how do you then attract the talent. I remember when I worked at Elle magazine, we weren't paying as much as other people. The role wasn't necessarily that glamorous, but we always had a queue out the door of people wanting to work at Elle magazine. And we spoke before a couple of days ago, and you were talking about you haven't got the biggest budgets, etc. So how do you get the best talent to come and work for you or work on your account via the agency?
Yeah, it's super relevant for us because I work for a self-care healthcare company, part of a big, old, stale pharmaceutical. A lot of people say we are a pharmaceutical company. We're actually not. We are a life science company, but that also doesn't sound too sexy. I used to before, as I mentioned before, I worked for Bayer. I worked for Adidas, and I remember when I made the move, everybody was like, "Are you mad? Are you insane?" But I always, said, I did it for the wife, I did it for the family, and there's all of that stuff. But it is for us. Obviously, we're not Unilever, we're not a PepsiCo, we're not a Adidas. So yeah, we need to find other ways to attract talent to work for us, in-house, but also with agencies. I mean, it has become a bit easier since the pandemic because, as we, I think, all know, I mean, healthcare, self-care, health and wellness. I mean, everything is health and wellness now, and everybody is doing it, which also makes it harder for us because we have a whole new level of competition, right? Like, I mean, we are a traditional player, and we have 5 peers which are kind of like in the same space and size as us. So, like, Kenvue is here today as well. Yeah, exactly. And Haleon and Reckitt. So these are, we are the traditional players with maybe a similar structure, although, we're the only one, I think, still in a bigger organization. Most others have spun out. But we also compete, now with, a lot of brands which make a lot of promises, through influencers, and it's maybe not all true. But yeah, so we need to do an extra effort to get talent in our company, but also on our agencies. And what our ambition was and is to really become a partner of choice for our client, for our agencies and partners, because we all know there's limited talent out there, and it will be even less in the next few years because we see what happens around us, right? So you need to stand out as a client. You need to really stand out as a client. You cannot just because you are because a lot of people think we are big, we have big budgets, but compared to the FMCGs, not even close, right? And we don't have sexy brands like some of the FMCGs. We have digestive health brands, Rennie. Okay, maybe not so exciting. So we need to do something else, and that's just being a good client. And I think, for example, what I mentioned with the pitch in a day, that's already something where agencies like, wow, that's cool. We actually we want to work like that. We want to work with you. So that's one thing. We have done creative incubators under our former CMO called Creative Unleashed, where we basically gave agencies a kind of like a non-brief brief to just share with us ideas which they felt were relevant for us, and then our CMO selected the idea with our countries and we executed it. So that's another thing. And just be a collaborative client. Be someone who doesn't feel superior. Because I've been in client organizations where there was a certain bit of arrogance, a certain bit of I tell you what to do and you do work for me, and I know my brand better than you, and I think this is just not the way how we can work anymore. So I think that's important, and I do feel because of that, we can maybe punch above our weight, and I mean, at least, it's maybe something we need to think how we can measure that. But I do feel that agencies appreciate that, and and partners, to have that, to work on eye level, and and co-create and do things a bit different. So yeah, these are kind of things we do.
Everyone loves a good client.
Well, no, but it's also I mean I said it I think on another Brand Innovators. I mean it just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I'm doing it not only because I want to be. I'm a collaborative guy, or we, I am like that, but I do it also out of, there's a self-interest, right?
Yeah,
because I'm 100% convinced that it attracts better talent for us. It's not just to be nice. There's a business, imperative behind it, and so it just makes sense.
Okay, before I go to the floor for any questions, I've got one last question for you. What are you most excited about for the rest of this year? You're not allowed to say AI unless you tell me what that AI is actually going to deliver for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, over to you.
What am I most excited about?
Could be a holiday to Dubai. I don't know.
Well, holiday to Dubai? I'm not sure. Well, I'm excited about Cannes. I know. Maybe that's an easy getting out of the door. Brand Innovators have for the first time their own beach, right, Alex? Right, Ritesh? So,
LVMH Villa as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So no, I mean, Cannes will be interesting this year. Obviously, it's just in 2 weeks, so I hope some of you will be there. Because for me, Cannes, and I've now also in my role be the guy who was honored to lead our delegation there. I think it has really evolved as a festival, right? As an event. It's not just a creative award anymore, right? I think people do, and I can tell you, in a company like ours, people don't understand that. They really think it's a 5-day party on a beach, which unfortunately, we don't help ourselves by posting stuff on LinkedIn, which makes it look like that. So maybe we should rethink our own, way of communicating about it. But it has become the place where the industry comes together, shows, and discusses innovation and where things go. But also, what I feel like it has become a more and more of a business event. And I think generally as marketers, we need to become more business people, right? I think just talked in a panel about it. A few years ago, it was all about purpose, and I felt it was a bit over-indexed. I think now it's about, it's much more about, growing purposefully, right? And I think also if you want to have standing in your company, you can't just be a marketer and for the sake of it needs to deliver growth. So I think that's maybe something also I think Cannes really has evolved into. And yeah, I'm excited about what Cannes will bring this year because I think there will be a lot of good content, a lot of good conversations.
Totally agree. I think it's become less of a vanity project or a place to go and give ourselves a nice pat on the back of how amazing we all are, and it's more honest actually about what are the problems and challenges in the industry, and actually how can we solve them together, whether that's with your competitors or your partners. So really interesting, and I will be there. So have we got any questions for Philipp?
Questions from the audience.
So this might sound off, but bear with me. You're talking about partnerships, and you're coming from a very functional category, right? So functional benefit for the consumer.
Used to be at least.
But recently the US approved some treatments or some role of creative industries and music and creativity as part of medical treatments and therapies. How do you see that? How do you see Bayer evolving to look for partnerships that are a bit more realistic and that run away from just functional and
it's a super interesting space, right? And as I said, like especially for a company like ours, like we come from a background of producing physical products over 160 years, and all of a sudden, for example, we are now working. We just launched a menopause range under Caniston in the UK. So yeah, a bit young, but I think maybe I don't know. So that's has now exclusively in Boots, and we are now also it's actually a range of physical products, but we have a digital companion to it, right? And so this is something we are now doing, and for the first time we're doing this, right? So and this is not easy for us because I'm just talking about an app, right? Because we just haven't even the systems to commercialialize a digital product. So not even going to music and other things. So I think for us it's super relevant, and it's our R&D teams and our we are working on it, but it's not something which comes natural to us, and that's why we actually need these agile structures that we can do that, that we can make sure that we pull the right people from inside the organization for a 90-day sprint, and maybe add some outside talent from agencies, but also other partners to come up with ideas to develop things like this. And I mean, the US is obviously there's a bit more flexibility there. In other countries, there's more regulation. But yeah, I think to answer your question, it's not easy, but we're working on it.
Awesome. Another question.
Hey, you talked a lot about the new decentralized operating model that you've moved to and how different it is to your competitors. In the spirit of partnerships and purposeful ones, what are the opportunities that you see for your agency partners with that new model?
Well, I think one of my first observations when we did it was kind of like, it's actually an agency model. Like it's basically like, so we had, for example, initially it was also the idea that we have, floating brand managers, right? And we have maybe a mega brand or a brand lead, and then you have brand managers who float from one brand to another. So spend a bit of time, on this brand, and then goes to another brand. And I mean, that's kind of like the agency model, right? Like, so I think, and we did it also, the idea was also to keep, talent excited, to give them more exposure to other brands. But it's obviously not something we've ever done before, but it actually is exactly how agencies work. So I think when you said about what opportunities does it give to agencies, I mean, we almost align, therefore, the way how we work with the way how agencies work. So actually, in that sense, the collaboration should become a bit easier. So yeah, I would say that's definitely an opportunity. And I also think now when we are, evolving our agency model and tweaking that, I think I always know, I mean, it's always like agencies kind of like replicate, the structure of their clients. And I think maybe that's something which we need to, reconsider, because if the client structure are sometimes too rigid, right, and too fixed. So you don't want to, as a partner, you don't want to build a structure or like mirror a structure which is outdated and inflexible. So rather the opposite, right? Because we know that, partners or agencies, they have more flexible structures, and that's the kind of like the structure we need. So maybe there's also something in there to rethink operating models in a way that, it facilitates better work. So I would say that's the option. That's the opportunity.
Cool. And our last question.
Hello, Philipp. Very nice to meet you. My name's Gareth. I'm agency side. I work for a digital marketing agency called Kepler. My role within that agency is to introduce potential new clients to the agency, right? So I spend a lot.
Nice to meet you.
It's very nice to meet you too, Philipp. I'll also be in Cannes. Maybe we can get a rosé. So a big part of my job is to make sure that I am well networked within the pitch consultancy community and across the intermediaries, and they know where we over-index, where we specialize. They understand our credentials, they understand the clients that we work for, and they understand how we position ourselves in that sea of sameness. But my question is, outside of that world, you'll have agencies that will no doubt have ICPs, ideal client profiles, write a list of brands that they feel would be, there's a perfect marriage there. Like, we think of our partnerships as a marriage. It's absolutely two ways, and both parties have to work at the same pace and the same speed and the same effort for this marriage to work. And that for us is a successful partnership. So my question to you is, what is your advice for agencies when it comes to socializing their agency at the brand level, so as not to overwhelm, to be, be right place, right time, with the right message. So you're kind of front of mind, but without being, it's a very fine balance, isn't it?
Yeah, it's super difficult, and I don't envy you, because maybe that's also the reason why I didn't stay on agency side for too long. It's hard. I mean, and I can tell you, like, I get cold calls, I get approached by agencies every single day, and I would say 9 out of 10 I don't even react, because I just don't have the capacity. Because if I react, then obviously there's like, oh, let's talk about it, and like, and I would love to sometimes, have a conversation, but it depends also a little bit. Like in our case, obviously, as I said, we come from a background where we have 5,000 agencies, so we already have too many, anyways. So to have new ones, we have just to be very selective. I'm not saying that we don't get new agencies, but we have to be very selective. I think for other brands or other companies, it's different, right? So I think it's maybe for agencies, they need to be very empathetic and need to really understand where a client is, what they do, what they need. So it does maybe require a lot of analysis and research, and then basically go to the relevant people when they are ready, right? And when they are open, and not when they are like, oh, I don't have time or capacity, because you don't want to, get them in the wrong moment. And, you don't want to, there's only one chance to have a good first impression, right? So, and I think maybe honestly, like, and I have to say, shout out to brand innovators, like something like today, right? It's a great way to engage, and a great way to have a conversation, maybe also understand where the client is. And, like, it's better for you to speak to me now than to send me an email, right? Because I will just not respond. Today I will speak to you. Yeah. So things like this, right? So just be empathetic, right moment, right way, and then I think the chances are much higher.
Right. I think we're out of time. Thank you very much, Philipp, and thank you all for being engaged.
Yeah, give it up to Ossie and Philipp.